good news here, and it could be found in some of the 80% who survive and ultimately beat this virus. That's a remarkable number to do. Now, they all don't necessarily qualify to sort of have the secret blood in the plasma that will help other people get better, but a good many of them do. And Diane Berrent, who has been dealing with this, a COVID-19 survivor, she has started an organization to get that help and that blood plasma on the way to folks who need it. So she practices and leads the charge on what she preaches. Diane, very good to have you. How are you feeling, first off?
I feel great, actually. You're looking at the face of a fully recovered COVID survivor. I, in fact, just went and donated my plasma for the third time yesterday, and I've also participated in multiple other studies.
Now, how did you know, or did doctors tell you what you've got here is unique? I mean, you're not just a survivor. You might be a secret weapon to help others out.
Absolutely. Basically, my body encountered a novel virus and created the antibodies that it needed to fight it off. And so I now have those antibodies in my system. And I did have a follow-up diagnostic test to make sure that I no longer had the virus in my system. One thing we are seeing is that people are showing up with the virus in their system for much longer than we thought. So keep that in mind if you're looking at the guidelines of when to release yourself from quarantine. But in addition to that, I was given a full antibody test, and it showed the concentration of my antibodies. And the icing on the cake is that I am a universal donor, which is only 4 to 5% of the population. So as my doctor said, my plasma is like liquid gold.
Could you give me an idea on your own timeline, Diane, when you first discovered you had it, how long you were either in quarantine or being treated, and then coming out of it to the point where you look great today. But can you explain what you went through in the timeline?
Yeah, so I was exposed on the evening of March 9th. It was at a business-type meeting of 8 people, so under the recommended 10. At the time, this was before there was even a term called social distancing. Everything was still open. And of those 8, I believe 7 of the 8 were infected, and one has tragically died from COVID, who was exposed, I assume, at that same meeting. I presented with symptoms on Friday the 13th. There was nothing subtle about it. I had 102 fever and a respiratory infection, and the symptoms persisted for about 10 days. And, I could go into it, but everybody's symptoms are so different that I don't want anyone to look at my symptoms and try to analyze their own situation, because COVID really presents as a constellation of symptoms, with each person having a different subset. In terms of giving back and using those antibodies to help others, we were finding that really it's at the 21 to 28 post-symptomatic date that you're most effective, because it's a higher likelihood that you no longer have the virus in your system and your antibody count is higher.
Finally, as someone who's had to endure this, are you comfortable with people getting back to work, however they do it, or does it make you nervous, or how do you feel about all that? I mean, obviously there's an economic rush. I understand it, but then there are people who look at you and say, "Gee, I don't want to deal with what Diana dealt with," and so how do you balance that? How do you feel about it?
So right now, we are being given this binary choice between saving the economy and saving lives. And I do see Survivor Corps as an off-ramp to that. But for it to happen, we need proper testing. And one thing that I'm concerned about is the rollout of all of these antibody tests that have not gone through the full analysis to make sure that they are effective. And they don't give you the full picture, these at-home kits that are being rolled out. They give you a simple black or white, similar to like a home pregnancy test. So if you took a home pregnancy test and you got a positive or negative, the first thing you do is you go to your blood lab and have your hormones checked to find out just how high your hormones are. So to rely on these quick tests, I think, could be a bit dangerous. But once the testing is in place, absolutely, in conjunction with also a negative diagnostic test to make sure that you're contagious. I think that could be our route to getting people back into the workforce slowly and making sure it's done safely while we still are able to shelter people at home who are still vulnerable. And so I don't think it's an either or, and I don't think it's on a state by state basis. I think the way to do it is with the proper testing and, looking at what Germany is doing with immunity passes. And, maybe we shouldn't call them immunity passes quite yet until the, science really bears that out completely. But there are strong suspicions, but at least it means that you're not contagious. That said, you still do have to be careful, because even though I know for a fact that I am not contagious, I could still be tracking it on my shoes or on my clothes. So we have to make sure that it's done in the safest possible way. But I see this as really the off ramp to that false binary choice between the economy and lives.
Yeah, I like that. Diana, continued good health, feel well. Thank you for sorting this out for a lot of folks and helping a lot of folks in the process. Diana Berrent.